To kick us off, we have Sheila Warren. I just wanted to give some context. So yesterday we had a day zero event on data cooperatives. A few of the folks from that session are in the room, and it was an incredible session. Sheila, again, who I'll intro in a second, wanted to set the foundation for why decentralization matters, and in particular beyond just financial use cases. And provide some connective tissue to that data cooperative event. So focusing on the importance of data as well. So just to intro, Sheila is the CEO of the Project Liberty Institute and Chief Strategy and Operations Officer for Project Liberty. Previously, she was the inaugural CEO of the Crypto Council for Innovation, where she still serves as an advisor. Sheila has testified before Congress and state legislatures, frequently appears in major media, and has spoken globally at leading universities and forums. And she was recently announced one of Washingtonian Magazine's most powerful women in Washington. So we are very honored to have Sheila.
Why decentralization matters. Thanks so much for having me here today. I wanted to, as Tony noted, give a frame because we've been talking, as many of you in this room know, for years about the financial system. And we've been landing a lot of the conversation about decentralization within DeFi. And while that is a super important conversation, you can see all these headlines, I would like us to just for a moment imagine a time that I personally hope is months, not years away, where we're no longer putting the words market and structure together in a way that rolls off the tongue, right? We're not talking about stables or genius or stable genius or any of these things. This is all rearview mirror for us, and we've landed some of the basics of financial regulation and legislation that we've been trying to get for so long. And instead, we're having this conversation, which in my opinion is a conversation we should have been having for a lot longer in the advocacy, comms, and policy spaces. It's about data. And when we talk about decentralization, the data conversation is actually an easier entry point to a conversation about decentralization. Why? Because of headlines and because of people's lived experiences every single day. So I'll tell a little bit about how I started. So I began my blockchain journey, my red pilling, orange pilling happened when I was at a place called TechSoup. I was general counsel there. And we were working with activists, human rights activists in war-torn regions, parts of the world, domestic in some cases, very, very sensitive private information. And we were seeing tremendous hacking attempts on our servers. And I was very concerned. This is like a lives at stake situation. If this data got out, we were going to have all kinds of problems, people disappearing, all kinds of things were going to happen. And I was having dinner with a friend of mine who said, have you thought about putting that data on a blockchain? And I said, what the hell is a blockchain? And he said, well, have you heard of Bitcoin? And I said, oh yeah, isn't that what people are using to buy drugs on the internet? And he said, yes, but the technology underlying it is really amazing. And so Ethereum had just launched. I read the paper and I became super enamored of the idea that we could create more security around this information remaining permanent if we use something like this technology. And also solve some of these problems that you'll see here, right? These are all familiar headlines. I mean, the one on the left, 23andMe, is like last week, even yesterday. The idea that when we have these centralized ownership of information, it can be exploited, it can be extracted, privacy is negligible at most, it can be subpoenaed, all these things can happen that are really dangerous in some cases for users, but at a minimum are icky. You just get the ick around this concept that you're being watched by a company or by a government or by an entity that doesn't have your best interest at heart and doesn't even know who you are or care about you at all, okay? So this entry point to the conversation, it illustrates the challenge of the centralization in so many ways. There's economic challenges. My favorite one on this entire thing is when people kind of flew by. The idea that GM in their cars was actually selling information on driver behavior, like microsecond reactions, like when you broke, like when you were braking, when you were stopping, if you're running red lights, to insurance companies. And they were creating differentiated packages around your insurance without permission, without consent of any driver, which is wild to me, right? Now some folks are like, oh, that's a good thing. Is it though? Should we be able to be monitored in that way, in ways that have this direct impact? These are all challenges that are really easy for policymakers to understand. Much easier than, with all due respect, DeFi, which raises all kinds of hackles and iron, all kinds of flags. And the other good news is we did a poll. We surveyed 1,000 Americans, and you can see there is tremendous demand. We talk about crypto awareness, crypto wallets, crypto users. There is tremendous demand for data rights. As fundamental as that, this idea that Americans want data rights. They want to understand, like, who's using my information? Can I delete my information from a place meaningfully? Can I do that? Or is it there forever? Wait, what do you mean it's training AI on my information? What does that mean? I don't know that. Did I agree to that? I'm not even sure what's going on. So even in a more literal way, when you talk about social media, Americans, at a minimum, they have, again, this sense of the ick. Like, why am I stuck here? Why can't I take my graph? Why can't I move from place to place? And again, these are not hard things for people to understand. They're very viscerally easy for people to get, including policymakers, because there's someone in their family, they themselves, they understand, like, I don't want to feel like I'm stuck in a place ever. I don't want to feel like I don't have the ability to exit a platform or experience that's not serving me or that doesn't feel right to me for whatever reason, whatever the reason might be. Okay, so Project Liberty and the Institute, we talk about 3 high-level principles, and we call these voice, choice, and stake. And the idea is, we talk a lot about platforms, talk a lot about users, but what about the sea we're all swimming in, namely the internet? So right now, we don't actually have voice choice, and we don't have meaningful voice choice and stake in the internet. And stake does not mean the way we define staking in our ecosystem. It's just generally talking about the idea that you can support the projects you want to support in a way that is native to that project. Okay, so that's kind of what staking is in a way. We kind of boil it down to its high, or boil it up, I guess, to its highest level. But this idea that you have meaningful choice is really, really important. In theory, it's things like data cooperatives. We had the session we had the other day. In practice, it's a lot of these principles that we talk about all the time, right? What should happen with your algorithm? We talk about a transition from the attention economy, this is a social media concept, to the intention economy, that you're meaningfully choosing to be in a place, which means you can choose to not be in that place, right? And if you're stuck, you're not actually really, at some point, you're not really choosing, right? At some point, that choice becomes irrelevant. Who owns your information and your data? How do you authenticate into that system? How do you verify who you are? What are marketplaces like? What economic models might actually flow if we thought about a user-centric internet? If the sea we're all swimming in online every day was user-owned and user-centric versus platform-derived, right? That would be a pretty powerful thing. And of course, all the way through to personhood and transparency, concepts that we're all familiar with in our ecosystem. For policy, it looks like this. It's talking about network effects, talking about antitrust. It's talking about increased competition and innovation in this space and fueling that innovation and competition with users at the middle of the model, at the center of the model, right? And then it's all kinds of points that really are bipartisan or nonpartisan in general. Stronger economy, more jobs, right? The way that you could actually use your data as a source of economic opportunity for you, the data that's getting leveraged every single day and creating tremendous value. If you have the ability to have stake in that data and that information and make choices around it, it gives you agency in the systems that nobody really feels like they have right now. So we've seen a lot of this happening at the state level. We've seen a lot of this happening at the international level. It's time for it to happen at the federal level. And my hope is that as we move towards this people's internet, as we call it, this concept, we move beyond market structure and stable geniuses, and we get to this conversation, we'll be able to achieve a people's internet that truly has users at its center. Thank you.